You're on.
Hello everyone, good evening. The subject of tonight, it's one of those serious subjects that deal not only with Christianity and Judaism, but focus on one of the most focal points in the tragedy of the relationship between Christianity and Judaism that goes back generations before. I would like to start with a just personal story that happened several days ago. I went on a train to New York City, and on the way back from that beautiful engagement of David's sister-in-law, I had the privilege to sit next to a fellow that served his community as a bishop. And we befriended while we have several hours trip between New York Penn Station to BWI. And with our engagement and conversation, Christianity and Judaism come up, in particular the book of Daniel. So it turns to the point that he asked me to ask him a question. We play that game. So I present to him several questions, but unfortunately it wasn't an answer. So what it turns out, the end of all of those several hours of conversation, that we reach nowhere, which in a way it's abbreviation to what's happening to the book of Daniel from the earliest time to our times. One of the focal points of the forceful debate that the rabbis faced in the past, especially during the Middle Ages, involved the story of the book of Revelation in the New Testament and the foundation of book of Daniel in the belief of Judaism and Christianity, especially the interpretation of the last several chapters. So what we're going to do this evening, we're going to glance over the complications of the book of Daniel, try to understand the source of the serious disputation between Christianity and Judaism. And as I said before, we're not going to give a clear resolution to all those questions. It's just some example to give you a heads up. I asked him a question. I said to him, listen, my dear friend John, you believe in the Ten Commandments. You strongly believe that the Ten Commandments is for real. So what's the first commandment say? You shall not have other God by me. So if you said no other God but me, how do you interpret the Jesus? And his answer, in a friendly manner, he said, this is a Jewish tactic. I said, all right, let me ask you another question. I said to him, you just told me that Jesus participated the last year of his life in the community Passover Seder. You know that during the Seder we pour out 5 cups of wine. 4 we drink, wine and grape juice, and the 5th one we leave for Elijah. And in our tradition, during Passover Seder, we open the door, and we believe that this is a symbol for the future times, that Elijah will come and he will bring the Messiah at the end of the days. So how do you explain to me Jesus sitting in a Passover Seder while the whole issue of him being the Messiah? Again, the same answer, he said, it's a Jewish tactic. But the main idea of our discussion, in a sense of serious discussion, was the book of Daniel and the interpretation of that book. So let me share with you some abbreviation of what is the book of Daniel all about and why it was such a focal point of disputation. Those who just came in, please. The book of Daniel divided to 2 parts. The first part which mainly written in ancient Aramaic. It's a pre-Talmudic Aramaic. It's much complicated Aramaic than the regular Aramaic. Even the great Rashi of the 10th century, in his interpretation, said several times, I do not know the clear meaning of certain words. And there is another section that it's written in Hebrew language. It's another serious question, why it's written in such a way. We'll get to that, hopefully. Another point in the book of Daniel is the feeling of exile, interpretation of dreams of different people. Very, very enigmatic, mystical book, involved with a lot of mystery, which for sure the Kabbalah world have a lot to do with this book. And interpretation not only of the Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonian king's dreams, but also interpretation of Daniel's dreams, but different interpretation and different meaning. Many of those interpretations, again, are very inscrutable, and we try to explain those interpretations. And then the famous ending, which is the prophecy of the Messianic era, the end of the days, including dates and times, which again, we need to go through that part and understand. So as you see, my dear friends, we have a lot of work to do tonight. And I will begin with the point of the, which is called chezionot. Chezionot meaning some type of inspiration that Daniel had. Who is Daniel? And why it's important to know the story of Daniel. This is one of the books that is a part of the 24 book of the Tanakh. As you know, we talked several times, unlike Christianity that counted as 39 books, we counted as 24 books of the Tanakh. The location of that book, it's a different views, but we hold that it's close to the Chronicle, but before Ezra and Nehemiah, which is very close to the end. It's not considering one of the book of prophecy, especially since it was outside of the land of Israel, but it's still considering a book with a Ruach HaKodesh, meaning holy, divine, providence, spirit, when it was delivered. And Daniel himself was a young man at the time of Nebuchadnezzar that was forced to go to Babylon and serve him as a court Jew. Just again, to give you the right perspective for those who are not familiar, Jewish people went through several exiles. The first one was upon the destruction of the first temple. It was a Babylonian king by the name of Nebuchadnezzar who sent his army to the land of Israel, destroyed the temple and exiled the Jews. Those remnant of the Jews went to Babylon and they lived there for many generations. Some of them later allowed to return to the land of Israel, not by Nebuchadnezzar, but by the leadership of the next king of Persia, Darius. And he allowed the Jews to go back and later on build their second temple. Daniel was a young man, among other three. His name of the other is Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Three other people, altogether 4 young children, that recognized by the evil Nebuchadnezzar as a tremendous potential people with a tremendous ability of leadership, and therefore they appointed to do a different job for the king. In that sense, if we want to comprehend in our language, imagine an observant Jew that asked to serve Hitler or asked to serve Stalin in his. So usually and unfortunately, most of the cases in our history, our fellow Jews not serve properly our people. Daniel is a very righteous man by everyone. He really did which we call Kiddush Hashem, and sanctification of name of God, the way that he served. He went to Babylon and he served not only the king Nebuchadnezzar, he served in his palace, he served in his court, and his personal needs in a very close relationship. It was another 3 by the name Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, and they have here and there some issues with Nebuchadnezzar. Some of those issues were the issue of megalomania of Nebuchadnezzar. As you know, especially in those days, those people who have tremendous power, they wanted other people to bow down to them. You read in the Megillah, Haman is just as an example, but Nebuchadnezzar was an earlier example of that. And for sure, this young man refused to do that for all kinds of reasons. Some hold that they have some feeling that he carry idol, or whatever the reason is, they refused to bow to him, and he sent them, the whole three, he sent them to a fire, and they escaped the fire, which means they went to a fire, and the text speaks about angels that disturbed them. What tremendous miracle. Daniel too refused to bow down to the king, and the king said, with all likeness, I have to do something, otherwise if it starts with you, other people will follow that, and they are not going to observe my dignity or my recognition as a king. And he sent him to a lion den. And again, miracle occurred. He went there, I'll tell you the story in short, and he survived. Lesson to be learned right away is that Nebuchadnezzar, with all the impression, he said, wow, what a God you have, you Jews. What a God that saved you for such a tremendous thing that no one believed. But lives go on, which means the text wants to teach us an important lesson, that the way that we conduct our lives is an example. If someone wants to be vicious or evil, miracle will not change people. What changes people is a certain pattern, certain behavior, certain self-decision, but not miracle. Even Nebuchadnezzar saw a tremendous miracle with these four young men, still did not change his attitude. In any event, Nebuchadnezzar, while he was ruling the world in a way, and the center is Babylon, he had different dreams. And he asked his people to interpret the dream. In a way, it's similar to Joseph. And eventually, they couldn't give him a proper interpretation. And he called upon Daniel, and Daniel interpreted the dream in a satisfaction of Nebuchadnezzar. Satisfaction, yes and no, because one of the dreams talk about he saw on the wall a letters written, and eventually he told the king that he's going to lose his kingdom. So that's one section of the book. There's another section of the book dealing with the dream that Daniel himself had. And he cried and he struggled over those dreams, and he turned to the point that he prayed to God and he said, God, you either help me to stop these dreams and nightmares, or you're going to tell me what is those dreams all about. And from that point, the book changed to a different language. It's no longer Aramaic, it's now in Hebrew, and the text said that angel Gabriel came to Daniel, and he gave him the interpretation of the dreams, which basically are four. Some of the interpretation we understand clearly, some they are in debates. So this is basically the abbreviation of what we're going to deal with the book of Daniel. As we said before, this is a very mysterious book. As an example, we are using the story of Daniel and his dreams. He saw in a dream 4 different types of animals. He saw a lion, he saw a dragon, try to translate the Hebrew, an eagle, and a tiger. Lion, eagle, tiger, and a snake or dragon. And Daniel was not only petrified over those dreams, he gets feeling, he was shaken for a long time, and he was sobbing, fasting, crying to God and asking to tell him what those dreams is all about. And eventually, when Gabriel came to him, he said, those 4 apply to 4 different kingdoms. 4 different kingdoms between now, meaning Daniel's time, at the end of the days. The first kingdom is the kingdom that you're exposed to, which is the Babylonian king. Babylonian king, the vicious Nebuchadnezzar, even evil, that destroyed the Jewish temple, slaughtered many Jews and non-Jews. And that part, when he saw the animals in a way of fighting, and one animal rule over the other animal, and I don't want to be too graphic, but those animals, one animal started, and then the other animal was horribly fighting against the other, and then the second one won over the first one, etc., go to the whole four. So Gabriel told him that then it will be a time that the Persian will take over the whole world. Takes over in the sense of rule over the Babylon, rule over the whole world, and we know it from the story of Purim and the story of the Megillah. It will be a better time for the Jews. In a sense, Darius allowed the Jews to go back to the Beit HaMikdash, build the temple, go to the land of Israel. Even as a side point, it's a big question about Darius, because in the text itself, in the book of Daniel, which again, it's a fascinating point, it's written that he is the son of Ahasuerus. So in that sense, Darius is Jewish, which means that the ruler of the world, in that sense, of Persia, the second kingdom, is Jewish. And it's a different rabbinic writing, different midrashim that debates over the personality of Darius. But it is clear that that king was very good to the Jews. But this will be the second animal. Then it will be a time of the third one. And the third is the Alexander the Great, the time of the Assyrian Greek leadership. And again, in that vision, you see that animal that not only ruling everything, but ruling everything and changing everything. So in that sense, the angel said to Daniel, it will be a time that the Jewish people feel again that they are about to disappear. And it was a time, if you read the history, not only of the Hashmonaim and the Maccabees, but all the story of the relationship between the Greek culture and the Jews, you see that that happened. Unfortunately reoccur, the feeling of absolutely annihilation of the Jews. And then the fourth one is the Rome, the fourth kingdom. Now, very close to the end, in that sense, is another type of animal. And the angel said that will be the most important one, the fifth kingdom. What is the fifth kingdom, and what exactly the angel said to him to remain the question. If you look at the text of the chapter 12, you see that the angel and the text itself said that is inscrutable, is sealing, is not going to be interpreted, etc., etc. So, just to give you an idea what's the interpretation that we have so far, it's two different avenues which we need to go deep level later. One is a positive and one is negative. One speaks about the fifth kingdom, in that sense you may say the fifth cup that we drink on Passover, speaks in a positive way about the kingdom of the Jews, in that sense the monotheistic belief of God leading the world, and in our language the Messianic era. There is a negative interpretation of that fifth kingdom, which speaks about the nation that will be a superpower, control the whole world, and it will be a tremendous self-destruction of the world until the Messianic days. So Gabriel said to him, look, this is a very serious and deep concept, and I really will go and give you some points, but guess what, Daniel? I really think that you should seal it. If you look at sentence 4 as an example of chapter 12, sentence 4, just an example, he said to him, but you, Daniel, must conceal these matters and seal the book until the time of end. So what is basically telling? He said, your vision, Daniel, what you see, first and foremost you should know that it is a reflection of what's happening above. An example, when you see a war in Afghanistan, when you see something terrible in Gaza, when you see a terrible thing that happened in North, Daniel, don't think that this is just a current event that you're watching on the idiot box on the television. It's much deeper. This is a reflection of a war above. Meaning, there are basically two worlds. There is a world above and is a world below. And in the world above, there are different entities. And those entities represent a different agenda in our language, anthropomorphic language. And anytime you see in this world earthquake or any big to-do, especially between nations, is a reflection of what's happening in the world above. It's an example. I heard that beautiful example for the great Rabbi Berel Wein, and I think that's a beautiful example. We are saying at the end of Kaddish, Ose Shalom Bimromav, we chanted, right? Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Israel Ve'imru Amen. What is the word Bimromav means? God who made peace in heaven, He will make peace upon us and upon all Israel, and Amen. What does that mean, that God made peace in heaven? What do you understand? So according to what Gabriel told Daniel, angel Gabriel said to Daniel, he said to him that there are different ministering angels above, that representing a different nations and a different entities. An example, and again I'm using an example I heard from Rabbi Berel Wein, but I think it's a beautiful example. We read several weeks ago in the Torah about angel of Esau that wrestled against Jacob. And Jacob wrestled against the angel of Esau, and it's a back and forth. The end of the story is Jacob left a little cripple, and there's no winning. Both left. The idea is Jacob did not fight against Esau. He fought against the ministering angel who represented Esau. So the serious of that story is the idea of wrestling, that you see the enemies who wants to annihilate us were those who wanted to get rid of us. And they see they cannot get rid of us, they can cripple us. Sometimes we are the winning, sometimes we are the losers. But that dynamic that illustrated between angel of Esau, the minister of Esau, and Jacob is the somehow illustration of what we said, may God who made peace in heaven will make peace upon us, because peace is a process. First, it has to be above. And then, when it's above, then it's go to the world below and we see it. Now, my dear friends, I must say that to me it's a very clear sentence when the angel said to him, seal it and don't give it to the masses. Don't give it to public. Why? Because people do not understand this. Try to tell people that the war you see in the other part of the global world is not only that war, it's something that happened above. It's for the masses, for the average person, I don't like to use the word ignorance, but the average person have a hard time to comprehend this. So therefore, the feeling is when you see, for example, you're standing on the front of the water and you see a huge wave, and you feel that that wave is going to be like another tsunami or another hurricane. And all of a sudden this wave just bow down to little sand and stop. And then there's another wave which is much worse than the previous one, and you get very scared while you are watching, and then the same thing happens. So in that sense, if you're thinking it's an example about the Holocaust, just as an example. Thinking how those entities try to annihilate us, and out of all of that we have the land of Israel. And he speaks in the book of Daniel about the idea of wanting to annihilate us, and then we have the land, and then we lose the land, and then we have the land, etc. And all these dynamics that happen to our people. In a way, in one hand, the book gives us a tremendous encouragement, because you see out of all these ashes, something good happened. By the same token, you see that the dynamics in the prophecies, in a way, it's something that open to many interpretations, especially the end prophecies. I give you another little example, what he meant. The whole idea of the end of the days and the prophecy of the end of the days, he speaks about the superpower that try to annihilate us and the rule over the whole world, and that superpower eventually will lose. So you can go to many directions. You can say that that's applied to Holocaust. You can say that that's applied to religion. The many, and soon I'll show with you some interpretation. But the feeling, I'll give you just a little example. I heard it from Rabbi Chaim Druckmann, one of my teachers. He said that when he went to the tunnels, the Kotel, the wall in Jerusalem, he saw a fellow by the name of Binyamin, very nice observant Jew that works an accountant for many years, and when he retired he decided to have a fun in his retirement by doing what? Doing cleaning and maintenance of the tunnels of the wall. So he was, for years, he was wondering why a man like him, an accountant, that retired once, it makes him so happy to do cleaning and maintenance of the tunnels. That Binyamin never wanted to tell anybody the story. But one time my teacher went to engagement celebration of this fellow's grandson, and his son, who was also a student of him, told him the story. He said, my father, a survivor of the Holocaust, he lost his first wife and children. And his job in Auschwitz was to clean the ovens each and every time. So when he eventually escaped the war and he came to Israel and built a new family, his dream in life is that he wants to revenge, he wants to pay back Hitler. So he felt what made him therapeutic satisfaction is going to the Kotel early in the morning, to the West Front Wall, and clean that place every day. And that makes him happy, because he feels that he, in a way, paying back, revenging. So in a sense, if you look at Daniel and you see that all the high-rise, like Mark Twain, famous statement, for all those different nations that rise up and fall and the little Jews survive, in a way that's part of understanding the end prophecy that Daniel tried to point out. Now, he speaks here another important point, which is the whole idea of prophecy of the end of the days and how Messianic era occurred and what exactly the time will happen. Let's go over some sentences in chapter left in the air. Several questions left in the air. For example, the change of the language between the Aramaic and Hebrew is still not 100% clear. And then you see the story of angel Michael, or Michael. He said at the first sentence that, very beginning of chapter 12, he said, at that time a grand prince Michael, which is applied to Michael, to angel, who stand over your people, will arise. It will be a time of trouble, the like of which never been since they become a nation. At that time your people will spare all who found written in the book. So what's happening? This is a prophecy at the end of the days. Speak about Michael or Michael, angel that in a sense he is the emissary in all literature to help At this time he is like silent. He cannot give any idea or any interpretation what's happening because God himself involved. What does that mean, God himself involved? Speaks here about a tremendous war. You can say that it's a reflection of the war above, but again, it's dependent upon how you take the text. When you said, like we said at the end of Alenu Leshabeach, Bayom Ahu, that day, Hashem, God will be one and His name will be one. What does that mean in that day? So some rabbis hold that this is the prophecy of the end of the days. An example, when we're speaking about God interfering, takes the idea of the end of World War II. How the World War II ended. Those of you familiar with history know clearly, at least as a religious man I can say, that is a God interference. When the Russian and the German were very close to each other and the German was about to conquer Moscow, it was sudden, a tremendous blister of snow who stopped the Germans very close to Moscow. And that's basically the end of the war. So in my language, in a sense, the language of Book of Daniel, it's a language that God himself eventually interfere. Which in that sense speaks about two different levels. God interfere in the world above, and it reflects in the sense of supernatural event in the world below. But again, it's difficult to express to people, so I try to do it in my very best. The interpretation I share with you is the famous Rashi, regular 10th century rabbi's interpretation. It was another great rabbi, a little later, at 11th century, by the name of Rabbi Abraham ibn Ezra, who hold that it will be a time of great war. And that, we need to elaborate on that. Maimonides hold that when we speak about war, that the whole world will be shaken, and if you read further the sentences, is the world war, tremendous superpower nation that they rise up. Maimonides hold that this applies to a great war that will be between Christianity and Islam. That's the Maimonides point of view, and Maimonides is, as you know, it's the most logical, not only physicist, physician, but also philosopher and rabbi. He holds that that's applied to Christianity, or how he built it. So we need to see several sentences and see how they get to those points. Sentence 2, for example. Many of those who sleep in the dust on the earth will awake, some to eternal life, and some to disgrace, to eternal degradation. And then sentence 3. The knowledgeable will shine like the radiance of the sky, and those who turn the many right to righteousness will like star forever and ever. What is the sentence and what's involved here? So there are basically at least 3 to 4 interpretations. One speaks about the procedure. It will be a time of great war, and that war starts home. What does that mean? So you have the Talmud text. The Talmud said that if you read carefully the text, it speaks about people within our people, within Judaism, will rise up against our people, not only to be our own enemies, but help our enemies to annihilate us. That's part of the text. Rabbi Akiva, who is one of the greatest Talmudic rabbis, said, especially supported with another sentence that's written early in Daniel, he said, since the book of Daniel described the throne of glory of God, and since in the throne of glory it's written that God will sit in one chair and there is another chair that humans sit next chair, this is a prophecy of Jesus. That's what Maimonides said. That's the way they understand Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yossi which again, great Talmudic rabbi said to Rabbi Akiva, please display equanimity. You don't know what you're doing, he said to him. Chas v'sholom, God forbid to say that is any human sitting in the next chair to God. You can't say that, and you can open a Pandora box if you even think that way. Rabbi Yossi said, no, what's speaking here, it's the idea of God in a sense of metaphor, God controlling everything, and the world below, it will be, which you call Mashiach ben David or Messiah, but it's like a footstool of God controlling the whole world in two different levels. One is the super control, it's called Sovev Kol Almin, God is around the whole world, and then is the God controlling also in a personal level, in the small world, even the chair of the small world, who will be the next leader. That's Rabbi Yossi. But since that is a sentence in the book of Daniel that speak about two chairs in heaven, it's opened the door for Christianity to say that this is the beginning of revelation. Judaism said, no, it's not in any way a declaration of revelation. This is an anthropomorphic way to express a metaphor of God's sovereignty over the whole world. But because the sentence said it, and because it's written in an inscrutable way, and because it's written it should be sealed, unfortunately in our painful relationship in our history between Christianity and Judaism, especially during the Middle Ages, our rabbis and sages were forced to go to a public debates. Some of them were destined for persecution, and those debates usually end up nowhere because it's everything depends upon a faith. And if you take the great debate of 1263 in Barcelona between Nachmanides and the others, or you go to all different debates, Christianity and Judaism, in a sense that forcing the rabbis to enter to that public domain, and always the focal point is the book of Daniel, and that sentence in particular created all these public debates that lead nowhere. So as a result of that, there are several opinions, and I want to share with you those opinions so you see how the rabbis look at that sentence and look at those sentences that we just read in chapter 12. One opinion is the opinion of the, not only the Talmud, but is the opinion of many sages. I'm speaking 9th, 10th, 11th century. That they said, Tipach rucham shel mechashvei kitzim. They put, in a way, like a curse against those who try to make the time of the end of the days. Because if you read the sentences 8 to the very end of the book, so they said, I heard but I did not understand. Daniel said, I don't understand it. So I said, my master will give outcome to these things. Go, Daniel, he answered, for this matter are to be hidden and sealed until the time of the end. They will be clarified and elucidated, and many will seek to refine them. The wicked will interpret them for evil, and none of the wicked will understand, but the knowledgeable will understand. From the time of daily offering is abolished until lifeless abominations is installed, there will be 1,290 days. Happy is the one who waits and reach 1,335 days. Now you must go to the end and rest in peace, and that's the end of the book. So what does that mean? You're giving me here a date. Who knows what those days mean? No one knows. So the Talmud said, don't bother to even think that way, to try to figure out when is the era of the end of the days, when Messiah will come, etc. Why? Because it creates not only disappointment, but people hold up and thinking, oh, it's going to happen in 1240, it's going to happen in 1550, it's going to happen in 1660, etc. And all those false Messiah created false hopes, and as a result, most of the masses turn away from not only religion but God, because they losing their faith. They thinking that it will happen, it didn't happen. One of the famous illustration to that, it's a beautiful illustration, and again, I heard it from Rabbi Berl Wein, and I think it's beautiful. He mentioned that in a different lecture. Imagine that you're driving a car from, let's say, from Baltimore, Maryland to California, and you have your grandson sitting in the back of the car, and this little child, let's say 5, 7 years old, he's just want to go to California. So 2 hours later he said to you, Grandpa, when will be in California? And you said to him, very soon. And then you passed Boston, for example. And he said, oh, it's so many hours it didn't happen. Then you said, it will be soon. When it will be soon? In Cabo, when? How many hours? Don't you see a sign saying California? That's basically the story with Messiah. Because the complication with that is, you see a great man like the Maimonides, Rambam. Rambam, 12th, 13th century, he wrote extensively against pointing out of date of Messianic time. And he even put a curse against him. And he said that we shouldn't involve with this and shouldn't try to interpret those sentences in the book of Daniel in particular. It said here several times that it should be sealed, and we should not bother to even figure out when and where and how. And we suffer from so many false messiah, and we shouldn't do that. And the Rambam wrote and wrote and wrote, and then he himself wrote a date. And you ask yourself, I don't mean to be fascist, but just if you think about it, why and how come? So there is a fascinating Tosfot. Tosfot is one of the rabbis of the group of rabbis of the 13th century in France and England that wrote interpretation of the Talmud. So the Tosfot said, and remember that one, he said, what they meant when they give dates, for example, Rashi. Rashi brought Rabbi Moshe Weisblum, the great rabbi from the 9th century. He gives all kinds of dates. So it means that there is a potential. There is a potential to have end of the days in a certain time. However, we as a people are not worthy. In that sense, there is a potential to make things happen, but it depends upon our behavior. And if we don't behave properly, we just pass that time for the next destination, for the next chance. So in that sense, all those numbers that was given for all different sources, it's not a question of right and wrong. And that's, by the way, again, another interpretation of this text. Since it said in the text, you should seal it, and then he gives a date, it's opened the door for everyone. Everyone can give any dates they wish to. And if that happened or didn't happen, they are all right. In a sense, we have the potential. The question is when that potential will come to reality. And in that sense, it's in our hand. So that's usually the most of the rabbinic interpretation when it's come to the prophecy of the end of the days. Now, I must say that this is not the opinion of Nachmanides. Maybe it's because he was influenced by the great debate, which is another subject, the historical context. But Nachmanides hold that all book of Daniel, from the beginning to the end, who speak about the 4 kingdoms, speak about the era of the first and the second temple only. Nachmanides hold that this book has nothing to do with any post-second temple events. So when he speak about the great mighty king, he speak about the great king of the story of Hashmonaim and the Caesar and the story of Hanukkah. But there's nothing to do with post Second Temple's time. That's Nachmanides' opinion. Again, you can take it or leave it, but that's his opinion. I rather not comment on that opinion. But here is a sentence, 11. It's an example of sentence that creates tremendous debate. It's based on a sentence 2. So we go for a moment to sentence 2. Posuk bet. sentence who said, many of those who sleep in the dust on the earth will awake, some to eternal life and some to disgrace, to internal degradation. So Rashi said this is the prophecy of the resurrection of the dead. Ibn Ezra, Rabbi Abraham Ibn Ezra said that that's applied to the end of the days, that the wicked people will not be among those who resurrected. So again, the question is, what exactly you meant to say by the resurrection? So then they said, number 3, the knowledgeable will shine like the radiance of the sky. What does that mean, the knowledgeable will shine? So again, if you go by the Maimonides, he hold, when you see in sentence 12, and they're all connected, those sentences. Sentence 12 said, from the time of the daily offering is abolished until lifeless of abomination is installed, there will be 1,190 years. What does that mean? So you go backward, sentence 10, and they said, there will be clarified and elucidation at the end of the days. The wicked will interpret it from evil, and none of the wicked will understand. So Maimonides said that that's applied to Christianity. Which means, and that's, let me quote the word of Maimonides, which is very strong words. Maimonides Rambam said as follows: Yechaven, these words apply to Jesus. That he come from Judaism, which means Christianity will come originated from Judaism. That their intent is to abolish and to change our holy scripture, our holy Torah. And they want either to change or to destroy it. Which means it will turn the same way as the Babylon went up and down, and Persian went up and down, and Greek, Alexander the Great, went up and down. Christianity will go up, and the Jewish people need to struggle for millennia, but eventually they will go down. And then what happened? So Maimonides said, then it will be a time that when we speak about the superpower that applied to Islam, that it will be a tremendous war between Islam and Christianity, and Islam ruled the world. That's Maimonides' word of 13th century. Scary, and I'm not going to comment on that. But Maimonides' word said that Islam is going to rule the world. Now, we must remember, if you read Zohar, it's a question if it's the 2nd century or 13th century. In the Zohar, it's written that it will be, again, a great war between Christianity and Islam. And Islam will rule the whole world for 9 months. And eventually, God will interfere with their corruption, with Ishmael corruption. Ishmael is Islam. And God will rule the world. That's, again, that's the word of Maimonides' interpretation for that. Which, again, it's a sealed. It's not clear to us what exactly happened here, how it happens, and what happened. So here they said here, a simple statement, Metzudat David, it's one of the interpretation of the text, 13th century. He said, look, if Daniel himself cleared several times and he said, I don't understand, what are you expecting from us to understand this text? Or the word of the angel that he talks to Daniel. How do you expect us to understand? How do you expect us to understand the prophecy of the end of the days? How do you expect us to understand the whole idea of resurrection of the dead? This is a very, very hard to even get some idea how. But here we go to a little Kabbalah interpretation, more mystical interpretation. First, whole Daniel. Daniel himself, if you glance over the book, you see that Daniel had some complaint. He said during the course of relationship between him and the angel and him and God, he said, I really don't get it. In one hand, It is a prophecy we have from Jeremiah and we have from early prophecy that we're going back to the land of Israel in 70 years and rebuild the temple. I am here in Babylon for 62 years and nothing happened. And I'm struggling and I don't know what's the future. And how come that happened? And where are you, God? And why you don't have compassion upon the city of Jerusalem and upon the Jewish people? Now, if you read the prayer that we have in the synagogue every Monday and Thursday, the supplication, the hurachum, that we recite every Monday and Thursday in the synagogue, is a quotation from Daniel. That Daniel, when he was 62 years in exile in Babylon, and he see no future, he said, how come? The truth is, 8 years later, it happens. But at that very moment, he was struggling. And the quotation of his text we're using for our prayer and supplication every Monday and Thursday. So, in a way, book of Daniel is such a fascinating subject, but it's a lot of mystery. It's a lot of direction you can take, and there's no winning for any group in that sense, because it's sealed. There is a sentence that said here, that everyone quote, "Ve'amaskilim yaskilu kezor rakia." So they said that the wicked will interpret it evil. That applied to the false Messiah, or apply to those who said that that's applied to Christianity. It's all kind of idea. And then they said the knowledgeable will understand. So what's the knowledgeable will understand? So if you go back to the sentence that we said, V'hamaskilim, that's the sentence that everyone quotes. So they said, after many will sleep, sentence 2, many of those who sleep will in the dust will awake. And then they said the knowledgeable will shine like the radiance of the sky. So what is the knowledgeable will shine? So they said two ideas. One, they said that the truth of the matter, the Messianic era is over. As far as time is concerned, it's over. It's dependent on the people's behavior. That's it. As far as the time concerned, we passed that time. You go to Kabbalah, they talk about sabbatical year, which is number 7 that play important in Judaism, and we are 57, 70. So the most is no more than 230 years for the whole change of the whole world. Now, if you go to this text that said the knowledgeable will shine like radiance of the sky, that's applied to the righteous people. So the rabbi said that it happens that during the course of life, most of the people don't choose to do Torah and mitzvot and good deeds. Most of the people don't go like that. So they said, what happened to the stars? Most of the day, you see the sun, and the sun covered the stars, so you don't see the stars. Only a certain amount of time during the night, you can see the stars. But during the day, it's sealed. So they said the knowledgeable, which apply to the righteous people, at that time, in a sense of resurrection, after the Messianic era, will shine like radiance of the sky, meaning the world will be able to recognize how good and what these souls, these people did to the world, only after the tremendous change that taking place in the world. So what that change means? So if you look at the whole chapter speak about tremendous war, you can go in many interpretations. You can say that that's applied to a nuclear war that destroyed part of the world. You can say that that's applied only to the era of the Second Temple. You can say that that's applied to a war that may occur between Christianity and Islam. You can say that that's applied to something that will happen and we don't know clearly when and where and how. Who knows? No one knows for sure what is that, the meaning of the days here, the meaning of, but what we do know is the idea of this sentence, the knowledgeable will shine like radiance of the sky, meaning when a time comes, that only God will make a decision to tell us, then we will be able to understand a lot of things that we are not able to understand at this point of time. That's the famous rabbinic interpretation. They say that if Daniel didn't understand it, so maybe eventually he did understand, but we don't know. And the fact that it's written so many times that it's sealed is no winning book. It's no way that you can take the book and say that that's what it means. And that's one of the sources of the debate between Christianity and Judaism. Christianity holds that the book of Daniel is the foundation for the whole idea of Father and Son, and then they go to the Revelation. Judaism said that it's not a foundation because the book is sealed and it's open to so many interpretations. And since you don't know which one is correct or incorrect, the command, it was commanded in such a strong language to conceal the redemption, not to, either he himself doesn't understand, or if he knows, he cannot share it until the end of the days. And they said it several times that it will happen at the end of the days. Therefore, the rabbi said that it's written in numerous places that as long as the Jewish people doesn't have the temple, there is no longer prophecy. If it's no longer prophecy, therefore no one can tell us what's behind what and how things happen and what's the reason. So if you remember at the very beginning, I said to you that I have some type of discussion or dialogue with that fellow priest or bishop, and we talk, and as much as we are very, very friendly in the sense of speaking, we get nowhere because we're reaching here the whole idea of faith. Now, a few points before we have the question. Question that many times people ask is why Daniel did not move to the land of Israel, why all of his words is outside. So according to our sources, what is written in Daniel in Aramaic and the other books, Daniel was the secret advisor of the evil king Nebuchadnezzar and a secret advisor for other kings. And he was in a palace and he lived for long life, which is the era of the first, the era of the in-between the 70 years, and the era of the second temple. And therefore, because of his special task, he was not physically able to make it happen. The idea of understanding the whole world, the sentence that said that we all understand one day, it's something that, as much as the rabbis try to give an explanation, I think one of the best is the Tanya. It's a book called Tanya by Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, one of the third founders of the Hasidic movement, who said in chapter 37 in the book Tanya, he said that it's really in our hand in a sense of our daily mundane lives to make things happen, which means we as individuals have the ability to make things happen, in a sense to bring Messiah. What does that mean? So there is an opinion. Maimonides hold Messiah means a human leader that everyone agree upon his leadership. And the moment that will happen, then God shine his ray of light, in a sense, give him the ability to really do the right thing. But it will be a choosing of leadership among all the people. Either it's come in a bad way, which is the destruction of part of the world, and as a result people will start change their way of thinking about each other and behaving. Or it's come in a good way, that people just give up the ammunition and get along. But when it happens and how it happens, since we don't know, therefore it left like that. Now, another point that it's remained inscrutable, we ask regarding to Aramaic and Hebrew. There is a rabbinic writings that Aramaic is a language that the angels doesn't understand. And again, we need to go to that in different time. But basically, if you take the prayer of Brich Shmei, which is the prayer that we said when we opening the ark, it's written in Aramaic, and it's like one of the reasons that eliminated in some books, it's because it's the language that we can talk directly to God, because in that literature they speak about the angels as the emissary to transmit it, which again is open the Pandora box between Christianity and Judaism. For example, when we walk our home on Friday night, we said Shalom Aleichem to the angels, Malachei Shalom, which again, some rabbis eliminated that because it was an issue with Christianity. So just to show you how this book remained a mystery book in that sense. But knowledge is wisdom, and because knowledge is wisdom, we get some knowledge of this book. The book itself, as I said, it's divided to two parts. The first part is the exile of Daniel, the special relationship there with the kingdom, the interpretation of dreams, and the second part speak about the redemption. And because Daniel is so crucial not only in a sense of a relationship between Christianity and Judaism, but also crucial in a sense of looking forward for the future. People who suffer toward agony and persecution always look for something forward, something good for the future. And since each and every time we face those challenges, we look like, oh, we don't know how we'll end up, Book of Daniel is the book that brings a lot of hope. By the same token, is there a lot of obstacles in the Book of Daniel, because if you are literalist like Rashi and go by the text itself, it's a lot of problems that it's still unsolved. And as we said, it will turn hopefully one day that we fully understand the Book of Daniel. Yes, any question?